So our first objective is to describe the distribution of water in the body, specifically paying attention to defining those fluid compartments, right? The proportions, more importantly, of those various fluid compartments. And then later on, we'll talk about homeostasis, which is a really important concept. You're going to see homeostasis throughout the rest of the semester, throughout next semester, and it's a really important part of how the body maintains balance. We'll talk about that as our second objective today. Okay, so we're going to start off with this minimalist representation of the human body. And when we say minimalist, we mean that this is not what the body actually looks like, right? There aren't any arms or legs. We can't really see a brain here. But this is a really good schematic representation of the various compartments of the body and the various interactions with the external environment, okay? So if you look closer, there are two distinct environments here. The first one is the internal environment. So everything that you see in yellow is considered our internal body environment. This is everything that's around our cells. This includes our tissue fluid and our plasma. And to define those further, tissue fluid, sometimes called interstitial fluid, is all the fluid, i.e. water, that is around our cells, excluding our blood cells. Right? That is what we call tissue fluid or interstitial fluid. And then there's also plasma, and plasma is all of the fluid that is around our blood cells. Okay? So everything that is in the internal, sort of intimate aspects of our body, such as our organs and things like that, are associated with the internal body environment. Importantly is our cells and our interstitial fluid and plasma. Then there is the external environment. The external environment is everything that barriers the outside world, okay? Think about the air in our lungs. Think about the food that's sitting in your GI tract. Think about the urine that's in your bladder and other aspects of your urinary tract, like the kidneys. All of this area where our body meets the external world, although it's considered inside of your body, right? Your gut is inside of your body, it is still considered the external environment because the body here is being exposed to external factors such as oxygen, such as nutrients, such as in the food that we eat, and so on and so forth. Okay? So although the gut, the lungs, and the kidneys are in our body, they are considered the external environment. And really important to point out here is that wherever the internal and external environment come in contact, there is a lining that we call the epithelial lining, okay? It lines all of our external body surfaces, it lines our GI tract, it lines the inside of our lungs, it lines the urinary tract, the reproductive tract, etc. So wherever internal and external compartments meet, there must be that barrier protection, which we call the epithelial lining. Okay, now, these two compartments must sort of speak to each other, right? They must exchange. Why do you think that is? Why do you think it's important for internal and external environments to communicate? What would be the importance of having those two compartments communicate? Is there anything in the external environment that our cells may need? There is, right? Nutrients, oxygen, and there are things that are inside of our cells that the cells themselves need to get rid of, right? Such as byproducts, such as carbon dioxide, such as ammonia, nitrogen. So the cells need certain substances to maintain cellular processes, such as oxygen from the air that we breathe in, and nutrients from the food that we ingest. Likewise, within our cells, there are certain waste products from those metabolic processes that the cells must get rid of, such as that carbon dioxide that we have to breathe out, and those byproducts of said metabolic processes. Okay? So exchange is really important between cells and between the external environment because we have to get rid of things we don't want and we have to bring in things that we need to sustain life. Okay. And so the exchange here happens at various locations. Again, where this external environment meets internal environment, that's going to be in the lungs, right? Lining the lungs, where oxygen comes in, it's going to cross the epithelial layer at the alveoli, It's going to be in the GI tract where food comes in, and it's going to cross across the GI epithelia as well. Right? Nutrients are going to be coming in, and secretions are going to be leaving. And it's going to happen at the kidneys as well. In the kidneys, there are three processes that facilitate this exchange. The first one is filtration. And filtration is basically filtering all of the blood that is in our body. It's filtered through the glomerulus in the kidneys. And then after that filtration, the kidneys will then do some fine tuning. So they'll do some reabsorption. And reabsorption is taking back everything that we need that was accidentally filtered out. So when we first filter that blood, there are some substances, proteins, amino acids, that shouldn't be in the urine, and you have to reabsorb those things. Secretion is getting rid of things that we don't want. Excess bicarbonate, excess water can be secreted and released as urine. Whereas in the GI tract, the two main processes are absorption and secretion. So again, we're going to absorb nutrients in the food that we eat. So this is going to differ from reabsorption. So absorption is just bringing in nutrients from the food that we eat, whereas reabsorption is reclaiming substances that was filtered out in the kidney. Really important to distinguish those two processes. Okay? And then secretion, which happens in the gut, is just getting rid of substances that we do not need, toxins, byproducts, etc., that can be excreted from the body as feces. Right? So it's really important that this exchange happens at these 3 points. Importantly, things also exchange at the skin and some other areas in the body, which we won't really get into those fine details. But the three important areas are the lungs, the GI tract. Okay. Any questions so far? Any questions so far on the compartments and the exchange? All right. Now, let's look further at how the body is divided into compartments. So we call these compartments fluid compartments because this is how we separate all the water that's in our body. So all the water in our body, we just mentioned that our body is made mostly of water, is called our total body water, right? All the water in our body is our total body water. And this compartment can be further divided by several membranes. We call these semi-permeable membranes, and these are basically epithelial-lined membranes that divide one compartment from the other. Now, what do we mean when we say semi-permeable? What does semi-permeable mean? What does semi-permeable mean? Perfect, perfect. It only allows certain things through, but not others. So it is highly specific, highly regulated, right? And that's going to depend on things like size and charge and polarity, which we'll talk about later on. But basically, understanding that these membranes are semi-permeable is really helping us to understand that it allows some things through and others don't. So there's not this free flowing of materials, particles, substances. Instead, it is highly regulated and highly specific about what can get into a cell, for example, and what cannot. Okay? And this transport occurs between the various compartments that we're going to define. All right, so you mentioned that our total body water is all the water in the body, right? That's everything that is in our internal body environment. This consists of water, but also some dissolved materials like sodium, proteins, potassium, calcium, all of the water and those dissolved materials. Now, including in this solution is all the things that the body needs within this water. But it's really important that these substances get where they need to be. So in order to do so, they need to go across several different membranes, okay? And that's really the importance of these divisions, of these sub-compartments of body fluids. So let's look at how those compartments are further divided. So of our total body water, we have two major compartments. The ICF, which is our intracellular compartment, or intracellular fluid compartment. And this is all the fluid, that is inside our cells. This is typically called cytoplasm or cytosol in some cells. And this is basically in eukaryotic cells, the fluid that bathes the organelles within the cell, right? So cytoplasm. And this is the ICF, or the fluid that is inside our cells. Now, I want to point out here, this also includes fluid that is not only around our body organs and cells, but also the fluid that is within our red blood cells inside of our vessels. So I'll say that again. The ICF fluid compartment is going to include fluid that is in our body cells, such as organ cells, like muscle cells, liver cells, things like that, but also the cells that are in our blood vessels, which are called the red blood cells. All of that water constitutes ICF. The second major compartment is the ECF, or the extracellular fluid. And this is all the fluid outside of our body cells. Okay? Now, this fluid compartment is further divided into plasma, which surrounds our blood cells. I'll put that out. Right? Again, looking inside of our vessels, there's plasma, the fluid that's around our red blood cells. But then there's also interstitial fluid. That's the fluid that's around all of our other cells. Again, liver cells, muscle cells, bone cells, etc. So I'll say that one more time. So the ECF, the extracellular fluid compartment, that is all of the fluid that is outside of our cells. It is still in the body, still in the internal environment, but it's just around our cells instead of within our cells. And this is further divided into two subdivisions. There's the plasma, all the fluid that bathes our red blood cells inside the vessels, and then the interstitial fluid, which is all the fluid that bathes our other cells. Okay, now let's look at some numbers here. So basically, of our total body water, which is about 42 liters, now this can vary greatly depending on hydration status, if you're elderly, pregnant, children, this can vary quite a lot. But for a healthy male, there's about 42 liters of total body water. Okay? And of that 42 liters, about 28 of those liters is inside our cells, ICF. Okay? Now, I don't really want you to memorize these numbers, but understand the proportions here. So about 75%, right, certainly more than half of the total body water is tucked away inside our cells. The remaining 14 liters, we said, is further divided into our plasma, which is a smaller portion of that ECF, and our interstitial fluid, which is the larger portion of our ECF. Okay, so I'll say that again. Most of our total body water is tucked away inside of our cells. That's 28 liters, more than half of our total body water. And then the remaining ECF, which is everything outside of our cells, is further divided into interstitial fluid, which is the majority, a large chunk of that ECF, and then plasma, the smaller portion of the ECF fluid.